Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's so with ID here. So on today's tutorial, we're sharing with you guys how to make this beautiful short dress with exaggerated hips. And if that is what you're here for, make sure you stick to the end. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and drop a comment in the comment section. Let's get started. So I'm going to be cutting the front and the back together. So if you check, you'll see that I have two fabrics on fold. Right, the longer one is the back and the shorter one is the front. So the back includes the zipper allowance, which is about 1.5. So the front starts from the back, that is from the 1.5 inch, which is for the zipper. So the one on top is the front, while the one under is the back. So I'm just going to rule a starting point on my shoulder point, or shoulder line, sorry. Now we're going to go ahead and mark my shoulder. Now this zipper allowance is optional. You can do as much as you can or you want, but for me this amount I like to use. Okay, so I'm going to come down for the front by 3 inches for the neckline, and then for the back I came down by 1 to 1.5. So you can do 1 inch or 1.5 inch. I went ahead to mark my shoulder. Take note that I'm starting from the center front. I'm not starting from the back. Remember that back extension is for our zipper allowance. Okay, so after marking my shoulder, I also went ahead to mark my neck width, which is 3 inches, and on the shoulder point I'll come down by 1 inch for my shoulder slope, and I'll go ahead to do that, to connect that. After connecting that as well, I will also connect my front neckline and as well as the back neckline, and this is what I have so far. Now the next thing we are going to be doing is to get our armhole line, which we divide your bust circumference by 6 plus 1.5. okay, and what I have there, I'll just go ahead and mark that as well. Now around that point I'll just go ahead and also mark my shoulder measurement around there, so we can get a straight line. Then I'll go ahead to connect the shoulder point to that mark we marked around that chest line. Okay, so that becomes our chest line. All right, so now what we are going to be doing next is to get the midpoint of that line. That is our armhole line. We're going to get the midpoint of the armhole line. I'll divide it into 2, and then I'll go in by 1/2 inch. That will be for our front armhole. So around that point I'll go ahead and measure my bust circumference divided by 4. Okay, I'll go ahead and do that so we can create our armhole curve. So after doing that, I'll use, okay, before I go ahead and connect that curve, sorry, I'll come down by my waist. That's my shoulder to waist. My shoulder to waist for this tutorial is going to be 17 inches. I'll go ahead and mark that, and then around that waist point I'll also mark my waist circumference divided by 4. All right, take note that I'm not adding anything yet. I've not added allowance yet, but we are going to do that later. Okay, so now the next thing I'm going to be doing is to use a ruler to just connect that line, so you guys are seeing what we're doing there. Please, I don't want you to get confused. So that is my waistline or my waist point, so whichever one you call it. Now from that waist point I'll come down by, you can, it depends on your hip length. Okay, but because this is an exaggerated hips, I didn't want to go down more, so I came down by 9 inches. You can come down by 8 or 7 depending on how tall, how short, and how big you are. So for me, I came down by 9 inches, and I took my measurements of, that's my hip measurement divided by 4 around that point, and I'm just marking that out also, so we take note of what we are doing there. Now we are going to go ahead and add allowances to our measurement. Now I'm going to add 1 inch allowance on my bust for sewing. Okay, so the bust measurement, we've already done that, and I added extra 1 inch for sewing. Now on the waist I'm going to add 1 inch for sewing and also 1 inch for the dart. So it depends on what you want. You can add maybe more than 1 inch for your sewing allowance, but for me, I'm just trying to manage my fabric, so that's what I have there. And I used about 2, almost not up to 2 years. I used about 1.5 or so. If you're on my size you can use the same, but if you're not you can use more. So around the hip line I added 1 inch, and the excess I have there was about 2.5, so I'm going to be using the whole of that. So in total for the hip line is about 14 inches or so. So 10 inches plus 1, that's 11 inches plus 2.5. all right, so that's what I have on my hip measurement. Now I've gone ahead to connect all of that point, and you can see how everything is coming together. I'll go ahead and measure the length of my gown. Okay, so I want to be able to wear this to church, so it's not going to be very short. Now I wanted it to be on 30, I think 36, but I decided to make it 38. Okay, I decided to I wanted it to be on 36 years, and then I added 2 inches for fold. So we are going to make the lining shorter, so the fabric is going to go pushing more. All right, so by the time we are done sewing, what we should be having there is about 36, or slightly 36. So that around that measurement, so you can take your own measurement, and around that point it's just going to be the same thing with the hip, so we're not going to be cutting out anything. And yeah, I noticed that my line was not straight, so I had to like remeasure what I have on the gown length and also take note of it. It later became 38 and a half. So the half there was for sewing the lining to the fabric, like closing it up, so we don't have shortage there. So I'm just going to correct that, and then it's always important to cross check your measurement, please, so some parts will not look bent or slanted. So I'll just go ahead and curve that or connect that together, then I'll cut it out. So that's just very simple to make. So for the yardage, I used about, let's say, 1.5, but maybe more than, slightly more than 1.5. But I would advise you use 2 or 3 yards, so you can, have enough fabric to work with. Now after cutting that, I'll go ahead to connect my armhole curve for the front, as you can see. So the next one will be to connect the armhole for the back. The back doesn't need to, you don't need to go in by half an inch. So you just connect to the middle of your armhole line. Okay, so we have the front and the back there, and this is what we have so far. Now I'm going to add half inch to my shoulder for joining. You can try to add it if you want. If you don't want it, you can as well leave it. So I just go ahead to add half inch on the shoulder, and yes, I'm going to connect it. And after doing that, I'm going to cut my neckline as well as the other parts. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut my neckline, the front neckline. So I'm going to be cutting the back neckline first. All right, I'm going to cut the back first, and then we'll cut the front later. So just go ahead and do yours like that. After doing that, now I'm going to this is my I'm just showing you guys that what I have on my zip allowance is just 1.5. Okay, so I don't know if I've mentioned that, but that's what I have. You can do yours as much as you want, it's not standard. And after that, I'll also go ahead and cut out all the sides. As you can see, this is what we have so far. Now we need to remove zip bulging around the back, so I extended the waistline to the zipper point, and I came in by 0.75. You can come in by half inch if you're on the smaller side or you're not so busty. Okay, but if you're maybe on a bigger side a little, you can go in by 0.75, and I'll go ahead to just cut that out and open up the other side as well. If you take note of how I connected that curve, okay, so you don't take so much away from your hip line. So I'm just going to remove the back and then show you guys what we're going to be doing. We need to mark our darts lines. Okay, so what we are going to be doing before then is to cover our armhole for the front. Remember, we need to cover the armhole for the front and also the neckline for the front. And after removing the neckline, I'll come down from the neckline by 4. I think I came down by 4.5. I later increased it by about 1 inch, but I wanted it to be a little bit low. Okay, so it's optional. If you don't want it to be low, you should use 4.5. But if you want it to be like mine at the end of the video, you can go ahead and make it lower. So this is what we have so far. Now the next thing we are going to be doing is to determine or to create our darts. Remember, we took 1 inch for our darts. So around the waistline, I'll go in by my nipple point, which is my nipple to nipple, that's 8 inches divided by 2.5, 4. And from the shoulder, I came down by my bust point, which is 11 inches. Right now, from that bust point, I'll be coming down by 1.5. I'll come down by 1 or 2 inches. So I came down by 1.5, and around that point, I'll also mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2, which is 4, and I'll connect that to the waistline. Now from the waistline, I will come down by, you can come down by 4, 5, or even 6 inches, depending on how low you want your dart to stop. So I came down by 5 inches, and then I'll connect my line. So I'll also go ahead and mark the nipple to nipple point there to be sure that, so that my line can be straight, and then I'll just do that, as you can see. So this is what we have now. So we'll be doing inseam finishing on this sewing, so you learn how to do an inseam finishing. So just stay with me. Now what I'm going to be doing next is to mark my half inch on both sides, and I'll just connect my point like so. Now after doing that, we're going to sew this like so. All right, so we need to mark this that at the back as well. That's the other side of this gown, the other side of this front piece, and we'll also do that on the back. I'll show you guys how to do that, so just stay tuned. All right, so I'll show you guys how to mark your darts. There are different ways you can transfer your darts. Now I'm going to also cut my lining for both the front and the back. As you can see, I've gone ahead to do that. I cut exactly what I have on my fabric on the lining, and I'll be using doll face for this lining. Okay, so now this is my front and my back. I think I've gone ahead to also cut to also mark the dart for the other side of the front. So you see we are marking it. All right, you can try to mark it like so, or I can also show you the other way you can do it. Now I'm going to show you how to mark that dart on your back side, on the back fabric or the back piece, and also on the lining of your fabric. Okay, so I'm going to get my front lining and match it up with the front fabric. And take note, for my lining is shorter than my fabric by about 1.5 to 2 inches. Okay, remember we added 2 inches extra, so you can either make the lining shorter by 2 inches, but I like to make it shorter by 1.5 if I added 2, so that by the time we sew 1 inch, so it becomes exactly 2 inches. Okay, it doesn't become more shorter, it remains the same. Now the first method we're going to be using to transfer our dart is to match this lining and the main fabric together. You're going to be working with pins, so I'm going to pass my pin to one of the dart leg and bring it out, and take note of where it matches at. So you see I pierced it from the main fabric to the lining, and I took note of where the thing stopped or came out, and I used my chalk to mark. If you have fabric pen, I think that would be better, so you don't expand or make the dart lining, so make the dart bigger than the way it is. Okay, so I'm just going to use my chalk to identify where the dart is. So as you're doing this, you have to also be careful, make sure you measure, because sometimes it could be bigger because you're working with chalk. That's why I say if you have fabric pen it will be better, or if you have pen or pencil you can use and mark this, that will show. So I'm just trying to correct what the first mistake I made. So this is the first way you can do it, but this, I think this is a little bit stressful for me, I don't know, but you can use this to just pin all the points and mark all of them. So you mark the two dart leg, you mark the length of the dart and also where it starts from, and you're going to use that to mark that at this side and also on the other side of the lining. I hope that makes sense. Now the second way you can do this is just to remark your that the way you marked it on your fabric, just mark it like that. Okay, so what I would do normally is to come down from the shoulder by 12 inches, right? And then from the 12 inches, remember we came down again, and yeah, sorry, we will come down from what's it called, from your shoulder to your bust point, come down again by 1.5, and then you're going to mark your nipple to nipple measurement, which is about 4 inches. All right, divided into two now, which is 4 inches, and then you mark that. Also mark the length of your darts on the fabric, and then you mark that thing again on the lining. So if you measure for this particular dart is about 9.5, starting from the bust side. Remember, we're not working with the main bust, so let's assume that it is the bust point you're working with. So the dart leg from the bust point is about 9.5, so you're going to take note of that, so you know where your dart stops at. Okay, so that's the best way to, I don't know if it's the best, but that's the way I normally do it. So I'll just go ahead and retrace the same way I did that for the front. I'll also just mark the whole thing on the lining, on the both sides of the lining, the back as well, and also the main fabric. So that's what you're going to do, and so you can choose the one that is better for you, either to do it this way or the other way. Okay, but either way we are doing this because we are working with an inseam finishing. All right, so you have to take note of this. Now the back might be a little bit difficult for you because of there is zipper allowance, so I want to do that for you guys in case you're confused. So what you're going to do is also to come down from the same way we did, to come down from your shoulder by your bust point, and then you mark um your waistline as well to indicate your waist point, and at that waist point you mark your nipple to nipple as well. Okay, and then from there, from that bust point, you measure your that leg which is about 9.5. all right, when you mark that, you also take your half inch on both sides on the waist, and that is just it. Okay, so but for this one now, instead of marking our nipple to nipple, which is 4 inches, we are going to be adding extra 0.75. Remember our waist point was there was like additional 1.5 inch for our zipper, and we removed 0.75 from that zipper allowance. So what we have there now left, so what we have for that back now is 4 inches plus 0.75 for the zipper allowance. Okay, so that's what we're going to mark there. Now the other side might not be exactly that measurement which you match around the way, that's 4.75. Okay, so I would advise is either sometimes you can still mark the 4.75 or you mark slightly. I believe when you place your tape you should see where the point where should be straight if you're looking at the waistline. So that part should maybe be around 5 inches, then around the hip line probably maybe around 5.5 or 5, depending on how you cut your zipper bulging. Okay, so I cannot say this is how the measurement you're going to be putting or you're not going to put. So but what I would advise is just place your ruler on the waistline like so and just connect it straight. Okay, you don't even need to mark all of this. Once you get to where the point is, you just take your half inch from there and then sew. So what you're going to just do is to mark your half inch on both sides as well. I don't know if this is a bit complicated, but just take your time, you will understand it. It's very simple. So also go ahead and mark the same thing for the other side of the back as well as the lining for the back. Now the next thing we're going to be doing is to go ahead and measure my armhole round, and I will go ahead to do that. After doing that, we're going to cut our sleeve. Okay, so I've gone ahead. This is my sleeve. My sleeve length is about 6 inches. Okay, and I'll be adding extra 2 inches to it for the puff effect. So we'll be adding 2 inches to, sorry, my sleeve length is 5 inches. Extra no, my sleeve length is 6 inches, sorry. Extra 2 inches is 8 inches. 2 inches extra is for the puff sleeve, and then 1 inch for folding the hem, that's 9 inches. Okay, now I came down by 5 inch for my sleeve cap, or my sleeve height, sorry, for my sleeve height. All right, so I'm just going to trim off the excesses there. So the 5 inch I came is for my sleeve height, please don't get confused. For my sleeve height, I can come down by 4 or 4.5. So I wanted it to, to help the effects of the puff sleeve, so it to come out more. That's why I came down by 5. So around that 5 inches there, I will mark the armhole line, our armhole line, which was 8 inches, right? So I'm going to mark that 8 inches there, and then I will add additional 2 inches. This 2 inches is going to help for us to have access to fold to create the puff effect as well. And then after that, I'm going to add 1 inch, which is going to be for my sewing allowance. Okay, now on the hemline of the sleeve, I'm going to measure my round sleeve around where the sleeve stops. Just take your measurement down. I'll divide it into 2 and I will put that as well. Then I'll add 1 inch for sewing allowance. So we're going to connect that measurement together. I'm going to connect those 2 points together and just watch how I'm curving that out. Okay, I know this looks funny, but don't worry, when we are done sewing you will definitely understand. So the next thing we are going to be doing now is to connect our, or to create our armhole curve. So I'm going to just do that with free hand, and that's just basically it. And by the time we're done, you will notice that our sleeve is way bigger than our measurement, and that is how it's supposed to be. So we'll have some excesses to pleat. Okay, the more bigger your sleeve armhole is, the more puff you're going to have. I'm just going to measure what I have there around, and remember on our fabric we have about 11 or so, maybe 11 to 12, but this one we had more. Okay, so after doing this, we're just going to go ahead and cut out your sleeve, and I'll also go ahead and cut the other side of the sleeve. So we are basically done with the sleeve part. Now I'm going to bring my fabric and we are going to go ahead and sew our dart. So you're sewing your dart like this. You sew the front, you sew the back, the 2 sides of the back, and as well you're going to also sew the linings, okay, for the front and the back as well. And by the time we are done with that, I will show you what we've done. And before we do that, I'll also go ahead and close my shoulder and also the side of the fabric. Okay, so we are doing that at the same time. I'm going ahead to join my sides. I also sew my dart. You can see that if you have light or iron at this point, please go ahead and iron it. I couldn't be able to do that because there was no power supply, but if you do, please go ahead. It's very, very important to iron. So this is what I have at this point after joining, and then we're going to start doing our inseam finishing. Okay, and I think this at this point you should pay very close attention to what I'm doing. Now we're going to open up my fabric or my gown, the main fabric, okay, and the lining. So we are facing the right side of the lining to the right side of the fabric. All right, and I'm going to be matching all the points together. The first point I'll be matching is my shoulder point and the neckline. I'll match this and I'll pin all these things down. It is very important you do this, and make sure you do this before going to your sewing machine so everything aligns. You're going to take your time and pin all those things together. Pin every point, make sure that all of them matches. If there is no one that is matching or some is bigger, go back to the machine and make it to be equal. And I'm going to pin all of this together, and after I'm done pinning the neckline, we're going to sew by half an inch or by 0.75, whichever one you want. And also, you see this zipper side, we're also going to sew it. So now I'm going to sew by 0.25 all around. Okay, I like to do that because I don't want to take so much of my allowance. And then when I'm sewing from that side, I'm going to stop around 2 inches before the end of the lining. As you can see that the lining and the gown is not equal. Yes, so you're not going to close that up completely, so we can be able to close the hemline. So you're going to stop around 2 inches before the end of your gown, and I'll do that and show you guys. Now I've gone ahead to sew my clothes. I've gone ahead to sew my gown. You see how the joints or the parts are. You can go ahead to notch some points if you want to, and this is what we have. Now this is the hemline. You can see that the hemline is still very much open, so please, I would advise you iron so everything will lay flat for you and it will be easier for you to work with. Now the next thing we are going to be doing is to match up our hemline. Obviously it's not equal, yeah, so you have to match it up. So look at the difference there. So you're going to match it up like so and pin. You're going to make sure that all the joints, the side point is matching the lining and the fabric, they are matching. Look at that, you can see that the two sides are matching. It is very important, so it will help your lining and your main fabric to align. Anyone that doesn't match up, please go ahead and make it to match up. And then you're going to sew it straight, and after sewing the down, that's the hemline, you're going to close up that opening just by the same way you sew your zipper allowance or your center back. Just go ahead and do that. Okay, now after doing that, we're going to, from the armhole, turn everything outside. I've gone ahead to do that, like you can see, and you see that I've top stitched and sewn everything. I'm going to go ahead and turn this whole thing out, and make sure you take your time and do this so that all the points will come out very well. It's so unfortunate that I couldn't iron these things the way I would normally want to, but please just go ahead and iron yours. Okay, I've gone ahead to sew my sleeve. I folded the sleeve by 1 inch and also closed it by 1 inch, and now this is what I have so far for my gown. You can go ahead to iron it properly, please. I keep saying properly because it's very important, especially when you're working with doll face lining, so everything will lay flat. Now after doing this, what we are going to be doing next is to add your zip, sorry, to the gown. I'm going to turn this thing to the back, and I'll mark my zipper allowance. I'll mark the point I'll be adding my zip. Okay, so I'm going to use my zip and just take note of where I'm going to stop or where I'm going to, or you can just measure. If your zip is maybe 22 inches, you can measure 18 inches for your zipper where it's going to stop. Okay, so for me, I measured 18 inches from the back, and I'm going to just close up the end. That's the down part of, that's the part the zip is not going to be added. I'm just going to match everything up, and then I'll sew it by now remember our zipper allowance is 1.5, but we've already used 0.25, so what we are going to be left is 1.25. Okay, so you should not go ahead and mark 1.5 because you've already used 0.25. So what we are going to be closing our zip now is by 1.25. okay, so I'm going to sew that and close up that part and also attach my zipper to the main gown. Now the next thing we are going to do after attaching our zip is to attach the sleeve. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys how to do this, and it's very simple. Just pay attention to what I'm going to do. So I'm going to get the middle point of my, that's the shoulder point of my sleeve or my armhole, okay, and match up your lining. Please, you know you're working with the lining, so make sure everything is intact and is laying the same way the main fabric is. And I'm going to match the center or the notched part of my sleeve to the shoulder, that's to the joint part of my shoulder. I'm going to match it and I'll pin it like so. Now after pinning it, I'm going to flip this thing inside and bring it out, like bring it out from the inside. Then we are turning it to the wrong side like you'll see me do. All right, after doing that, we're going to match the end, that's the joint part, so the joining of the main fabric as well. You see how matching up the lining and the main fabric together is very important, please. That's why your measurement should be the same for the lining and the material, so that the lining armhole will not be too big or it's too small. So I'm going to use my pin to pin that down, and we are going to be sewing this sleeve from the armhole to the shoulder. Okay, that's how you're going to be doing it. So just watch closely what I'm going to be doing. So now as you've pinned that point, you're going to sew from there. You pin there, you sew from there by 1/2 inch or whatever allowance you give, you're going to sew from there up, and you're going to sew and you go up. When you get to around the shoulder point, you will see some excesses there. You're just going to pleat it around that shoulder. Then you go to the other side of the um armhole as well, from the down, and sew to get to the shoulder, and also pleat the remaining ones. Okay, so it's very simple. Just go ahead and take your time to do this. Just do it, and then you pleat. So you're starting from the down to the up, please. It's very important that you do that. And after I was done, this is what I have so far. You can see that my clothes looks really nice. I went ahead to iron it properly, and this is what my gown looks like. It looks fly, and yeah, this is what the back looks like as well. And if you've come to this end and you've not subscribed, please kindly go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to like, drop a comment in the comment section. If you have any question, please drop it in the comment section. So this is how to do your instant finishing, and you can see how neat this looks. So thank you so much for joining. See you in my next tutorial. Bye.